I've been drinking coffee for so long that I couldn't imagine not having it. It's been something like 20 years, and I've been making my French press coffee the James Hoffman way for almost 10 of those years. 4 minutes steep, and then a second 5-minute steep for 9 minutes. I mean, that's dedication to a home brew. And I always thought, well, what's the big deal? I only drank 2 to 3 cups a day. That's okay, right? But I'm almost 5 months off coffee, and yeah, it's worth it. And I know you really want me to tell you how I accidentally quit coffee, and you probably want to know that #1 reason. If it's not sleep or less anxiety, I mean, what else is there? In this video, I want to share this rabbit hole I went down having read Caffeinated, Caffeine, and Caffeine Blues, as well as Why We Sleep, and not to mention a bunch of medical abstracts, podcasts, and articles on coffee and caffeine. There's a lot to share, and I hope I give you enough to think about. And even if you don't think you drink that much coffee, or you drink coffee, but you don't think it affects you, I'll go through what I went through getting off caffeine, the benefits, as well as share 2 big realizations I had after everything I read. I'm also gonna offer some thoughts on who might really benefit from quitting coffee and how to do it. Let's get started. So how does one accidentally quit coffee? Do they sort of just like trip and drop their mug? Truth is, I got sick. I mean, really sick a few months back, and I lost any desire to make myself coffee, let alone drink it. I went cold turkey, and I don't recommend it. But I was sick and already feeling nasty, so I kind of just rode through it. The crazy thing was, I was on the call with my doctor who was telling me that the virus I had should only last about 5 to 7 days, but it took 12 days. And I'm convinced it was those last several days that I was detoxing off of caffeine, because it felt different. It like migrated mainly to my head, and I'm all hopped up on NyQuil anyway, so I don't know, I was able to minimize some of those terrible withdrawal symptoms you get when you stop drinking coffee. But man, did I just feel gross. After those 2 weeks, I was coffee free, and I thought, well, this is my chance to quit caffeine for good, or at least seriously try for a little bit. Because here's the #1 reason why you should quit coffee or get off your dependency on caffeine. Because you owe it to yourself to find out what it's like to be caffeine free. I'm serious. I don't think people remember or realize what life was like before. And whether it's coffee, soda pop, or those energy drinks, we kind of give caffeine a pass, like it's this acceptable addiction. If it were another psychoactive substance, say like nicotine, morphine, or cocaine, and fair enough, coffee or soda isn't as destructive to your health or life like the others are. We're not selling our TVs in the middle of the night for a latte, but we really just don't think about it. Caffeine is the perfect consumer product. It's legal, it doesn't kill you in a wide range of doses, and it's addictive enough to keep you coming back for more. Don't get me wrong, I love coffee because I felt it gave me that little boost, or it helped me get through the day, and I even enjoyed drinking it, and lately getting those single origin beans when we were all stuck at home and really upping my coffee game. But now, I just feel so much better. And don't you deserve to be the one in charge of how you feel? Coffee is consumed every day by at least 40% of the world's population, higher in the US at 65%, making it one of the most popular drinks in the world. Michael Pollan writes that caffeine is the most widely consumed psychoactive substance on Earth, and it is also one of the most poorly understood. The FDA even states that they don't even know the long-term effects of caffeine on the body. Did you know that 90% of the world's population consumes something with caffeine when you take into account soda pop, energy drinks, chocolate, tea, and of course coffee? And before you ask me about chocolate, I'll definitely touch on that in the end. While people's tolerance for caffeine vary greatly, most articles will tell you that 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine is fine. The FDA says that adults can consume up to 400 milligrams of caffeine safely. But what does that actually mean? Fine, safe? I mean, what are we measuring that against? It won't kill you, so there's that. You probably read that 3 to 4 cups of coffee is a good metric of how much coffee you can drink a day. But here's the big question. What do you consider a cup of coffee? That was my first big realization. A cup of coffee means different things to different people. It isn't how many cups you drink, but how much caffeine you're having. I drank 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day, so like, what's the big deal? You know, when I was 19, I remember the time I had 2 coffees in one day, and I remember it only because the first cup perked me up, and it was great. But that second cup, I mean, that made my heart almost pump right out of my body, and my hands were shaking. I mean, I honestly had no idea what was happening. And you know, over time, your body adapts, and now 2 to 3 cups doesn't do the same thing. The FDA says most people can handle 3 to 4 cups a day. Here's the kicker. Most studies about caffeine and coffee drinking refer to a standard cup of coffee as 5 to 6 ounces. Are you kidding me? You should try Googling a 5-ounce coffee cup if you want to laugh. I mean, a short at Starbucks is 8 ounces and a tall is 12. An 8-ounce small cup has between 90 and 100 milligrams. A grande Starbucks is 16 ounces and can have anywhere between 150 to 200 milligrams. I want you to think about what you use to drink your morning coffee. I used to start my morning off with this mug, or even this mug. And then I'd fill my travel mug, which was also 16 ounces. So by the time I got to work, I'd have anywhere between 250 and 400 milligrams of caffeine. Then I'd have one when I got to work, and then maybe I'd have a 4th cup later of the day because, you know, it helped me focus or function, or just because I liked the taste of coffee and I wanted more. So by the end of the day, I would have somewhere between 600 milligrams and, I don't know, maybe more, almost every single day for years. I mean, I was way out of the safe zone. Let me share everything I went through when I was getting off caffeine. So the first 2 weeks were absolute garbage. You get these terrible headaches because caffeine is a vasoconstrictor. They shrink the blood vessels in your brain. Once your caffeine starts to dissipate, the blood vessels in your brain expand and more blood is getting to the brain. I mean, that's a good thing in the long run, but it causes really bad headaches immediately. By the 3rd week, all I could think about was how I wasn't drinking coffee. I think that was the most annoying part. I started reading about coffee and caffeine just to keep me busy. I picked up Caffeinated by Murrey Carpenter and then Caffeine by Michael Pollan, who shares how he took 3 months off caffeine to truly understand its effect on the body. In Pollan's book, he talks about how he felt better than the people waiting in line at the coffee shop since he had weaned himself off of caffeine. And like, I felt the exact opposite. I would look at a coffee shop and I'd be like, I want to be inside of you. You know what I'm trying to say. I just missed my regular routine.
Because in that 3rd week, by the time it was the afternoon, I was just super tired. I just wanted a nap after work. Not that I could, but I just couldn't focus. I just felt distracted and so tired. And I get why people want to just grab a coffee and be done with it, but I didn't. And that's because when I went to sleep, it was amazing. I mean, I was dreaming again. I mean, I was probably always dreaming before, but not like this. I just thought as you get older, you don't remember your dreams or they aren't that vivid. But man, after getting off caffeine, I was sleeping better, deeper, having dreams again, and being able to remember them a bit. And probably the best part was getting up in the morning. I mean, when I woke up, I just popped right out of bed. My wife Julie used to tell me that I was a zombie when I woke up, and it would take me a few minutes to get up, and once I was up, I'd linger on the edge of the bed and grumble before taking a shower. Suffice it to say, I was not a morning person. But in that 3rd and 4th week, I was popping out of bed like a ninja. And now I know what you're thinking. But Alex, you look like a sack of shit. You could go grocery shopping with those bags under your eyes. Fair point. But also, I have 3 small children, work a full-time job, and make these videos. So do me a favor, and it costs you nothing, but it helps my channel. Subscribe below. And leave a comment or a joke if you'd like. I'd love to hear from you.
So anyway, that whole going to sleep thing and getting up and being awake thing became a whole lot easier. And that's one of the main reasons I didn't waver or fall off the wagon and into a cup of coffee. It's part of the reason I have yet to have a regular cup of caffeinated coffee. And you're probably wondering, you slept well and you get up great, but why were you so tired in those couple of weeks? Well, that was my second big realization. Coffee doesn't give you energy, it just messes with your sleep cycle, and it prevents you from feeling tired in the moment. And because you adapt, that moment doesn't last.
Let me break it down for you as quickly as I can using my kid's Lego. Your body uses ATP, adenosine triphosphate, that energy-carrying molecule that gets burned off throughout the day. Adenosine goes off, and it's basically like a car looking for a parking spot, and it lands on an adenosine receptor. As more adenosine connects with the receptors, like a key going into a lock, it turns on your sleep drive or sleep pressure. The more the pressure builds up, the likely you are to fall asleep. That's a good thing. Sleep is super important. And so when you drink coffee or have caffeine, you're introducing a substance that fits onto the adenosine receptors but doesn't turn on the sleep pressure, thus blocking actual adenosine from connecting and making you sleepy. But here's the thing about your body, it adapts. So initially the caffeine is blocking the adenosine from the receptors. So the body just makes more receptors to hook up with the adenosine. You can only keep two lovers apart for so long. And now you need more coffee and caffeine to block those lovers from hooking up. That's why you go from 2 cups a day to needing 3 or 4 or 6. The reason I was tired in the 3rd and 4th week is that when I gave up caffeine, my body had all these receptors taking all that adenosine. Thankfully, my body adapted once again and reduced the number of receptors, and now I don't get tired in the same ways. I'm not grumpy because I didn't have my afternoon coffee, and I have much more energy throughout the week.
And if you think you sleep just fine and that coffee doesn't do anything, studies show that caffeine prevents that deep sleep. And after reading Why We Sleep by Matt Walker, getting a full night's sleep is critical to a healthier you. He does mention caffeine a bit in the book, but in short, here's a quick summary. Sleep is important, and if you don't get enough sleep, it'll make you dumber, uglier, fatter, have a weak immune system, so you'll likely get sicker, and then you'll die sooner. I mean, that's basically the book. And so what's really interesting is that there are some claims that coffee has some positive health benefits, like lowering your chances of getting type 2 diabetes, heart disease, Parkinson's disease, and liver cancer, but at the sacrifice of a good night's sleep, I just don't know if that adds up. Or, at the very least, all the more reason to really minimize how much coffee and caffeine you are getting. According to Dr. Cherniske, author of Caffeine Blues, caffeine affects not just our sleep, but our health in so many ways, from gut health, chronic pain, anxiety, depression, insomnia, birth defects, headaches, and stress. You know, a major point in the book is that caffeine activates that fight or flight mechanism in our bodies. We see it as focus or the ability to get things done, but our body is just under stress. I think one of the more interesting anecdotes in the book was when he was presenting a study on the stress the body is under to a psychologist who just offhandedly quipped, you know, it's like a cup of coffee is no more stressful than watching a suspense thriller on TV. You can tell this is an older book, but anyway. It's basically NBD because it's just Netflix and chilling to a Jordan Peele movie. But the key takeaway Dr. Cherniske is making is that nobody watches 5 thrillers every day, year after year. But that's exactly what we do when we consistently drink so many cups of coffee. Our bodies are being stressed out. As for me personally, and this is totally anecdotal on my part, I definitely feel less chronic pain in my back and foot, and I'm on some pretty serious medication for my psoriasis, and I've noted that my legs aren't as irritated or as dry since quitting coffee. Take that for what it's worth, but Dr. Cherniske did say that caffeine can minimize medication's effectiveness. You know, I kept away from coffee until about the 3-month mark, when I had my first cup of decaffeinated coffee at a fancy third wave place called Go Get 'em Tiger in LA. They were super nice. I asked if it was a decent cup since I've always been led to believe that decaf was garbage. And even though it didn't have like all the flavors I was used to, it was a really delicious cup of coffee. They even gave it to me for free because I told them it was my first cup in 3 months. And so far, it's been over 4 months and I've had decaf coffee about a dozen times or more, and it's good. It's no joke. And when I do, I always order the smallest cup available, which is about an 8 ounce or a short in Starbucks parlance. But Alex, I heard decaf has a lot of chemicals and is unsafe. There are several ways to decaf your coffee, but there is the Swiss water method, which seems to be the best because there's no chemicals. However, you should know that your regular coffee has a lot of chemicals and pesticides too. Unless you're getting organic, and then you just get organic chemicals on your coffee. For me, I plan to start buying some really great decaf, so comment below on your recommendations. Oh, one last interesting study I read in regards to coffee and coffee sizes that, well, blew my mind. In Caffeinated, author Murrey Carpenter interviews researcher Bruce Goldberger, director of toxicology at the University of Florida, who studies the levels of caffeine in a variety of coffee establishments. He noted that although 5 ounces was considered the standard size, it was really rare to find and that about 10-ounce cups were more common. He also noted that Dunkin' Donuts Medium had about 143 milligrams of caffeine, whereas a Starbucks Grande had almost double that amount for roughly the same size. Now here's the real kicker. Goldberger even went to the same Starbucks in Gainesville, Florida, several times ordering a breakfast blend, probably a venti, and the caffeine levels were anywhere between 216 to 564 for the same kind of coffee, which is to say, that's a lot of caffeine for 1 cup. But even more so, if you've ever wondered why 1 cup doesn't always feel the same way on a different day, well, now you know. There was also mention of a Glasgow study by Thomas Crozier, and I looked it up where they measured espresso shots in Ireland from 0.8 ounces to 2.4 ounces, and that caffeine ranged from 51 milligrams to 300 milligrams per shot. Starbucks in Ireland had a 0.9 ounce shot and it clocked in at the lowest with 51 milligrams. So even if you had a 2-shot latte at a fancy Irish third wave coffee shop with big shots, you could well be over your recommended limit. And if you're thinking, well, who cares? It's just recommended limit. Well, for one, think about pregnant women who can safely consume 1 coffee per day or 200 milligrams of caffeine. And again, if we safely drink 3 or 4 cups, then the truth is, aren't we all just over-caffeinating ourselves all the time? So what can you do and who should consider this? You and I may like coffee, and yeah, there are studies that report on the benefits to drinking coffee. There are no conclusive studies that talk about if caffeine is good for you. All of them talk about how much is acceptable or safe, and so this is really more about harm reduction. So who would benefit from decreased caffeine aside from everybody who drinks a lot of coffee? Well, I think college and high school students that drink a lot of coffee should really consider this. There's a rise in mental health issues, and caffeine causes a lack of sleep, increased anxiety, and can lead to depression. So if you're in the middle of midterms or finals, and of course, if you find yourself anxious, definitely cut back. And anyone who uses those energy drinks should really just cut that out. And as you get older, it becomes harder for your liver to detox caffeine. So if you're over 55, you may want to keep it down to 1 small cup. And I have to say that even though Dr. Cherniske wrote the book Caffeine Blues, and he's maybe 60 plus, he still says he has a small cup of coffee in the morning while he reads the news. So take that for what it's worth. And so how do you cut back or detox from caffeine? Definitely don't go cold turkey. But if you happen to get sick for 2 weeks, well, all right, the best way is to just gradually cut back. First thing, 1, write down how much coffee you're drinking and when. Be honest. Do it for a few days so you actually know your routine. 2, substitute half calf for full decaf for one of your coffees, and then get a smaller mug or cup to drink from. Introduce more decaf into your routine slowly. And lastly, you can find an alternative like an herbal tea, like a rooibos red tea, if you really just need something warm. Some articles will tell you that caffeine goes out of your body after 12 hours. But it can actually take up to 3 weeks for your liver to detoxify all the caffeine in your body. So expect to be a little irritable and tired for those 3 weeks. And if you're worried about how will I socialize if I can't go to a coffee shop, they serve other drinks like tea and even decaf. So you can go to a coffee shop with your friends. And when it comes to drinking tea, just know that a fully 5-minute steeped cup of black tea has about 50 milligrams of caffeine. And if you steep it for 3 minutes, then it's as low as 30 milligrams. It varies depending on the tea, but it's nowhere near the levels of coffee or an energy drink. And finally, chocolate. I know you want me to tell you that chocolate has caffeine, and you heard it's a lot, and do I expect you to cut out chocolate from your lives? I want you to know that I would never suggest that. Most chocolate candy in the US has been so adulterated that there's only about 9 milligrams of caffeine, And 100 grams, 75 to 85% dark chocolate from, I don't know, say Ecuador, clocks in at about 80 milligrams of caffeine, a little less than an 8-ounce cup of coffee. And if you're eating 3 to 4 100-gram bars of 85% dark chocolate every day, like someone drinking coffee, then you, my friend, have other bigger issues you need to tend to aside from or including your caffeine intake. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've cut down on caffeine and how it's going, and I'll see you in the next one.